In today's episode, we have a deep conversation about how self-inquiry, asking oneself deep reflective questions, can help you to open up new pathways for personal growth and discovering source of emotions and beliefs. We talk about how facing life's challenges with curiosity can create a better understanding and acceptance of difficult situations. We talk about how to reframe rejection as redirection. Welcome to Man Quest Define Meaning, where we help men navigate modern life, find their true purpose, and redefine manhood. I'm your host, James, and each week, inspiring guests share their journeys of overcoming fear, embracing vulnerability, and finding success. From experts to everyday heroes, get practical advice and powerful insights. Struggling with career, relationships, or personal growth? We've got you covered. Join us on Man Quest Define Meaning. Now, let's dive in. Let's just start off. Tell me a bit about yourself.
Thanks. We came into contact because we're both part of Mankind Project, UK. And I was involved since 2010 in America before I moved here to Wales. And yeah, for me, it's been great to have a men's peer-to-peer support group that I can attend. When I came to Wales from America, I didn't know anyone other than my in-laws. And to be able to get on the website for MKP and find different groups, men's groups that I could attend in the area it was a big boost to my well-being and feeling part of this community.
We go back to your childhood, and how did you start to get onto the path of personal development?
Thanks. Yeah, for me, it started pretty early. I got a book on self-hypnosis when I was like 14 years old and started getting excited by the idea that I could change myself. I could do some simple practices that all of a sudden things that scared me, I would be more comfortable with. And then that led to a search for meaning and purpose as a college student who was on a path of, hey, I'm just going to make a lot of money. I'm going to be a stockbroker like my brother, and money's going to bring me happiness. And then, of course, at some point I questioned, is that true? What are the real riches in life and experiences, community, peace, harmony, contribution? And so that led me to questioning, what's this all about? And soon after that, I met a Hare Krishna on campus at the university or Florida State University. And I've read the Bhagavad Gita and it made a lot of sense and became vegetarian. And in all that process, I was just remembering friends saying, you're going to become a Hare Krishna. I was like, no way, I'm never going to do that. And then as I learned about the things like, why do you eat this way? Why do you dress this way? Why do you shave your head? Oh, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. And pretty soon I was like, oh my God, I've become one. And yeah, so then when I graduated, I finished my PhD in business from Florida State. I said, okay, 1 year before I become a professor, I'm going to live in the temple and immerse myself in the practices and the tradition. And that 1 year turned into 9 years. And so I had 9 years experience being a monk in a temple, the vow of poverty, and just my day filled with service, learning, comradeship, camaraderie.
Nice. That sounds like a really interesting journey. Just before we cover that a little bit, how did your childhood impact your teenage years and your 20s?
One way that my childhood impacted me, that I didn't have a religion. My parents' religion was Sundays we golfed. And I feel like because I never was pressured, you have to go do this. And I definitely never had anything like God's watching you and he's going to punish you. I never had any negative connotations with spirituality and God. And so when it came time as a 22-year-old college student to figure out, what is my belief system? What is my relationship with the divine? I didn't have a lot of baggage to get over. I hadn't been harmed and traumatized. And so, I think I was more open to the idea of not like whether or not God exists, but what is God? What is my relationship with Source? And How do I connect with that source? And what's it look like for me to bring out that divinity in myself?
It's a big question. What is God? What is purpose? What is desire? What are all these words? And I think as soon as you open that kind of worms, and you start to be open to this kind of stuff, it almost becomes a quest, a big quest.
Yeah, I like that word, quest. Because and for me, quest involves adventure and all the things we love, but it also involves like nights sleeping on the floor and the dark night of the soul and all the challenges to get to the other side of that quest. Yeah, I think for me, like if you talk about the chakras, and like for me, the spirituality was the top chakras. My heart was open. My concept of what's possible was really open. I was airy. And so then when I came into contact with men's work after I'd left the temple and got involved in Mankind Project and talking about shadow and how to not try to meditate away shadow, but to go into the shadow and to claim it as a gift, it felt very grounding. You know, that the activities of the men's group is earth-based. It's grounded. It's not airy-fairy. And so I feel like for me, that was really a help to feel like an integrated, more complete quest or evolution.
How did being in the temple really impact your life? How did really having that idea of living in poverty and being meditating, how did that really help you to ground into your purpose?
The process of bhakti yoga, as I understand it, is to find a way to be of service to the divine. Like, what's being called of me right now in the world? What's the highest good I can perform? And when I'm performing that service, I can do it with a mentality of, oh, I got to get this over, then I can get back to my Netflix show, something that's really important to me. Or I can embrace it as there's nothing better than this moment right now. And by that full presence in the moment, in the activity, it's like you think of the Buddhist monks that do the sand mandalas, and like they're fully there in that. And then when they're done with it, they just scrape it away. It's not important. It's the process that's important. And for me, that's something that I felt the temple training gave me. What is my motivation? Am I able to deepen my service to another person? Am I able to get free from that mentality of what's in it for me? That kind of taints the exchange. It taints the exchange. It's like the price tag for deep ecstasy is giving up the price tag. So the more I can lose myself in the service to another, the more I get. It's that kind of challenging quandary. How can I give up my fear that I'm not going to get anything out of this? And by giving up that fear, that's where the reward occurs, the payoff.
How did you give up fear? But actually, before we dig a little bit deeper into that, how did you find the journey on presence? Because I know from my own perspective, last year, one of the things I've been really focusing on is becoming more present in my everyday life. But it seems to be, sometimes I'm able to be present, but then other times there's a battle between present and becoming unconscious. How did you start to really hone in presence, and what kind of steps did you take?
What I heard you say there was like, yeah, you're interested in presence because you sense there's something there to this, because you have a different experience of the world when you're present versus what I heard you say, unconscious. And so for me, I'd challenge you or invite you to look at what is taking you out of presence.
I think it's more the everyday kind of habitual habits. So, for example, when you go downstairs, you get into perhaps a morning routine, but because you perhaps have this idea you're going to do this, it's a lot harder to be present because your body almost automatically takes over. Or another example could be perhaps I'm doing a job that I don't particularly like, but I do it again and again. So I become unpresent or unconscious with regards to that. And it's more working out how were you able to overcome that of being unconscious to becoming more present?
Yeah. What I heard you describe is an experience I have sometimes driving. Like I drive somewhere and it's like, how did I even get here? I don't feel like I paid attention to the driving, any of it.
Yeah.
And yeah, you can have your morning routine, and in some ways the body takes over and the mind goes somewhere else. And there's maybe a loss of experience. There isn't as much taste, or you don't relish the experience as much when your mind is elsewhere.
Yeah, I think it becomes tedious, becomes boring. And I've noticed yesterday, I had a podcast yesterday, and we did, rather than actually talking about his journey, we did like a coaching session just to explain and show people the impact of shadow work. And one of the things we did was connecting to the safety officer, the magician side of things, and having a conversation of what does he need to protect the inner child, the boy inside, when the actual being, the king energy, or as people say, that the being that we are when you're present, can actually start to run the show more by being in that state of presence.
Yeah, so there's a way you could experience leaving presence because of a safety officer, or a fear of, hey, did I take care of everything for yesterday or for the future? And did I do something wrong yesterday that I need to clean up? So it's maybe past and future oriented.
Yeah. So whereas when you actually, the only time you can really impact your life is really this exact moment. So by obviously being in that state of presence, it's then when you're able to connect your intuition on a deeper level. It's then when you are able to really feel that bliss or that feeling of ecstasy, because you are present in the body. And so the question more about is, how can listeners, start to take that idea of being less present to becoming more present in their everyday moments?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Yeah, how to do it. I think it starts with first having a reason to. And I loved your explanation of, I can have an activity that I'm doing without presence, but it can be boring. There can be a way that there isn't as much taste to it. And I heard you describe that the reason there isn't as much taste is because I'm not embodied. I'm feeling through my mind. And that's only one of the ways that we acquire information, pleasure, connection, joy in the world. If we can engage the body, the mind, the intellect, the soul, the eros, all of the energies that make up this divine human experience that we're having, the more that we engage them, the more richness there is in this moment. And sometimes maybe we've had this experience from psychedelics or something. It's just, whoa, the colors, the touch, the feel, right? That's not doing anything that our body can't do itself. Psilocybin, all these things, it's just changing the serotonin and the dopamine that's already existing in our body that we can create, as you say, by bringing this full presence to the moment.
Because I come to realize is that where the more that you become bored of the mundane things that you do throughout a day, the less conscious, the more likely you are to take on things like binge watching TV or pornography, other things. And it's more, this is my own realization, is that within boredom, though, there's actually space. And it's exploring. When you start to explore, I did it at a dance festival. There's times when I don't always partake in all the activities because I feel in that moment they need to do that thing in that moment. So it's more along the lines of being able to sit quietly, doing nothing, and allowing boredom to come up. And then within that boredom, able to explore what is boredom, what's underneath boredom, what's inside boredom. And then the answers that's when you suppose you get the gold.
Thanks for that. Yeah, what you'd say is like there's a way that an emotion can come up, in this case, boredom. And rather than be like, oh, bored, I want to drink the antidote for boredom, do something. But instead of trying to get out of the boredom, to really go into the boredom. Yeah, to be curious. What's this about? How's it feel in my body? And then what I heard you say is like from underneath there, some deep answers might come out. Like for me, it can be unexpressed grief. If I've got unexpressed feelings inside, anger or grief, then I've numbed myself and my life feels boring. And through emotional release techniques, like I've been involved in the ISTA, International School for Temple Arts, and they teach a lot of emotional release techniques. We do it in Mankind Project. By doing these activities, then I reconnect with the vibrancy of life. All of a sudden, the haze of boredom has been removed. Yeah, and it won't be from binging Netflix or doing a wank or something. Those are all temporary. They're not going to express the full emotions deep underneath. And then the wank and the Netflix is much better after I've done that emotional release. I'm not against self-pleasure or entertainment.
So obviously we're talking about the temple. How else did being in the temple impact your life?
Leadership. Yeah. I was in charge of the temple for 7 years, and I was given the keys and said, okay, because meditate good or something like that, or know how to distribute books in a parking lot, you should be in charge of people. Like, I had no training. And I reverted back to strategies for survival. In this workshop that I'm involved in, Sattvato, we talk about strategies for living versus strategies for survival. Strategies for survival are looking good, maintaining an appearance of control. I got this together. Anything but being vulnerable. And it's because in my role as a temple president, I wasn't sure what I was supposed to do. I put on the mask, the persona of authority. And then I often had a different voice, and often that voice was yelling at people. Yelling, management by yelling. You won't find it in any of the Stephen Covey books. It was a Scott McGregor special. And what happened is after a few years of doing that, I was depleted. Yeah, I went to the emergency room in America for a backache. And I said, this is so bad. My legs are numb. I don't know what's wrong. And they did an x-ray and said, there's nothing physically wrong with you. Maybe you're trying to get pain pills out of us. Like, no, I don't even drink coffee, tea, or anything like that. And so I went to a network chiropractor, and he said, oh yeah, this isn't a physical problem. This is an emotional problem. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I can't move. And so he did the muscle testing where they put the arm in the air and he puts pressure on it. And he says different things. And he talked about bereavement or grief. And I'm okay. When people die in my life, I feel it. And then he said, dogmatically positioned persons. And my arm went down. And I said, I don't even know what that means. He says, well, your body does. And he says, it means the people you care about in your life, you're at odds with, you're in an argument with. And you feel like you can't resolve it. And I'm like, yeah, about 40 of them. Because as a leader in a community, whatever decision I make, for some, it was too strict. And for others, it was not strict enough. And so I was having voices in my ear all the time, like, you have to do different. You have to do different. And yeah, it felt like a lot of tension. And so it was a relief for me to know, okay, at least I've identified the problem, but I didn't know what to do with it. And so the next day, Hare Krishna, a friend of mine, David Wolf, he said, yeah, I've been taking his counseling skills courses to help me learn how to manage the people in the temple better. He said, I've developed a 3-day seminar that I think you should come to. I'm like, totally, I'm there. And it was great. It was 3 days of really looking at what are my strategies for living life? What is the things that I learned from watching mom and dad argue, the things that I learned from being ostracized from a group of kids as a 5th grader, and who do I really want to be in the world? And a lot of empathy skills too. So how to listen to people at a deep level. And I was in one of the final processes of the workshop, and it had to do with obstacles. And my obstacle was, I want to make my personal relationship with the devotees in the temple, devotees is what we called Hare Krishnas, my priority. Yeah. And even like saying that would bring tears because I just thought, I can't do it. I've hurt their feelings. I've treated them harshly. I can't do it. And we personified our obstacles. Don't want to give away the process. But in there, I got to really stand up for what I believed in and argue with my obstacles. I'm not going to let fear get in the way. And then the other one was like, you've got too much to do. You don't have time to prioritize relationships. And I argued, if the devotees are happy, they'll do 10 times as much work. And so it was a real way to take the mental things going on inside, put them outside into physical space and engage with them with real energy. And after that process, I was like, hey, my back's all better. And it was that instantaneous. It was that much of a one-to-one correlation. The challenges in my life were coming from my head, and they were manifesting in my body in a pain that was practically debilitating. And so that gave me a lot of faith in this idea that by repressing things, I'm going to hurt myself in the kind of Gaber-Mate explanation way of like stress is the cause of all ailments. Unfelt traumas from childhood. These are things that are really affecting our health and well-being. But yeah, I continued to be involved in that workshop, the Sattva Tov workshop, and David's written a book, Relationships at Work. And for the last year, I've been bringing him here to Wales from America to teach that workshop. And I'm bringing him again January 9th through 12th in Landrindod Wells, Wales. And it continues to be a big part of my unfolding, and the listening skills that I've gotten from that workshop have been recognized and appreciated in the men's group circles. And I've done a lot of specific help to help men's group leaders hold a sacred space for other men by deeply stepping into their world, helping them feel heard and understood, and having the trust that I don't have to advise someone. I don't have to fix someone. But just to hold an unconditional positive regard and an open space for them to explore what's going on, they have the answers to solve their own problems.
So that idea was that you would take a challenge that you're having, such as I don't have enough time, and you would argue the reasons for that you do have enough time. Was that?
Okay, so I'm going to describe more of that process. So the process is to take somewhere where you feel stuck in your life.
Okay.
And then to have 3 or 4 people personify your obstacles. I want to do a new website for myself. So my obstacle is I don't want to pigeonhole myself. I love the work of Byron Katie. She's one of my mentors. I love the work of Sattva Tov. I love men's work. I love the Tantra work that I'm involved in. So I don't want to make a website that's going to limit me. And so that's one of my obstacles. Another obstacle is I can't stand working at the computer. I like to be out in nature. Another obstacle is it's never good enough. And so I would let these obstacles argue with me. And then usually you have a coach too, someone who's on your team, like, come on, Scott, you can do this. Tell them, stand up for yourself. And yeah, we'd say, go. And then the obstacles would argue. And then when the obstacles got that I was with 100% of my being committed to my goal, then they would sit down.
Okay.
They'd come to the point.
Because yesterday I had a coaching session and we went through this process of, we realized that I've got resistance to little resistance to certain things. And she was saying it's about that feeling of, what was it? Unfair. Underneath the surface, there's I feel a lot of unfairness. So she was getting me to talk about all the unfairness that I'm feeling, and then to turn it around and to ask me, why is it fair? And by doing that and working out why it is fair, you start to create a list of gratitude for that thing. So little things, yeah. So it works quite well.
Yeah, so you're describing a process of what we call in Sattva Tov alternate perspectives. So looking at something from another viewpoint, glass half full, half empty. So why is this way I'm being treated in this circumstance unfair? I can my mind can find all the reasons why I'm right. That's what mind does. Mind is trying to serve us every minute, either telling us how to stay safe, now the safety officer, or it can be of like, I have a belief, nobody really likes me. They don't really want me here. And then it gives me all, oh yeah, this person, they canceled that meeting with you. And this person didn't invite you to a party 5 years ago. And then it might even be so supportive that it'll remind me of something from childhood.
Yeah.
So it's nice to take the mind and say, hey, mind, look at it from the other perspective. And then, it can also be our best friend or our worst enemy. It's a verse from the Bhagavad Gita. The mind is something for us to utilize as a tool, not worship as God.
Yeah, nice. I like that. That's quite a powerful statement. How did you really get from going from the temple to into men's work and joining the MKP?
There was a step in between there. So I had gotten a book on my birthday, and it was called Loving What Is by Byron Katie. And another monk in the temple gave it to me. He said, I think you'll like this book. And in there, one of the questions she asks in her process is, who would you be without this thought? And I'm like, I can do that. I can just pretend, erase the thought. And I got really excited by the process. I read her book. I started doing it. I was feeling a lot of freedom in my life. And at the time, I was supposed to start flying from Florida to Los Angeles once a month to participate in some governing body meetings. They're asking me to take on a more higher management role within the Hare Krishna movement. I don't know. There's something inside me like, this isn't what I got into it for. This isn't where my next step is. And instead of saying yes to that, I said yes to Byron Katie's 10-day school. So it was a real immersion in the process she calls the work. And the work is looking at our belief systems, bringing them out, what our subtle beliefs might be that the only way to live in the world is win-lose. In order to get what I want, I have to take it from someone else. And I don't want to be a taker, so I'll just put away my desires. So to get clear about what those stories are that are going on subtly in our mind. And so in her workshop, I had my mind blown. I blew my mind. And in that was a lot of freedom and authenticity and natural joy for life. Yeah, I felt like I was seeing God in every tree, every plant, every person that I came in contact with. It was a beautiful opening. And of course, I went back to more regular consciousness, but it was still there in the sense that when I came back to the temple, I could not make myself do something I didn't want to do. There was no more obligation, no more people pleasing. There was no belief that anyone on the planet wanted me to do something I didn't want to do. So they'd ask me, are you going to come hear the Swami speak tonight? And I'm like, no, I'm going to go play basketball. And so they're like, oh my gosh, you're so honest. I would have said, look, I have to read the scriptures or something. But I had no one to impress, no obligation. And so being a leader in a community, that was the beginning of the end for me. I was definitely getting up earlier than I wanted to. I was chanting more of the mantras than I wanted to because I wanted to set an example for the younger people in the temple. I wanted to set an example for what a good Hare Krishna is. But in that process, I had forgotten that, hey, an aspect of being a good Hare Krishna is being authentic. And so I was striving for a higher level of spiritual realization than I was at. And it was fake. So when I came to that real platform, some people were like, yay, Scott, so happy for you. And other people were like, you're doing it wrong. Basketball's not going to get you to the spiritual world. Chanting is. And so I saw that in order for me to continue my authentic path in life, I couldn't do it in that community. I couldn't do it where other people were being affected by my decisions. So I turned over my management to the temple. And it was a long process of a year. But it was a necessary next step in my evolution. And I still have a nice connection. I enjoy being in a kirtan or meeting Hare Krishnas when I'm out and about. And it'll always be in my heart. But the path of authenticity is the one I worship. And so that took me to Byron Katie. Got involved in her work, and we lived in the same town, Ojai. So I was fortunate to have some good training from her, and I continue to stay involved in that community. I teach some of her workshops. And then someone asked me, they said, "Hey, you want to come to a men's group?" I'm like, "Yeah." And the first time I went to the New Warrior Training Adventure. So Mankind Project has this 3-day rite of passage, which we are both graduates of. And in that space, there was 40 men in the room. I got in that workshop, and it's the first time I've ever been in a workshop or even a space like that with all men. And I heard this voice come up like, if mom's not here, the men are going to kill each other. If there isn't a woman in the group, I can't trust men. And I didn't realize I had that in me until I went into a workshop space or a setting where I was confronted with that belief. And I had these beliefs like, I'm younger than that guy. He's younger than me. We're different. Like, I make more money than him. He's not like me. I had all these differences. And then after doing a few processes and hearing, what's your fear in life? What's your joy in life? Who are you as a person? The more I heard, I'm like, oh my God, you guys are just like me. And so for me, that was really a juncture in my life from seeing men as kind of competitors or acquaintances at best. But the people that I confided in were women up until that point. So I changed my relationship with men from a distant thing to, I have support. I have the support of brothers that I can cry with, that I can laugh with, that I can ask for help from. And trust that they want me to succeed.
Because I remember when I did it probably about, I think it was 2 years ago, but it was more the power of being in a room with 100 men and to know that they all have your back, but at the same time, you are just like them. You are in the same situation as all these men are. And it's that ability to be able to speak your truth, to be able to talk about your emotions, to be able to be honest and open, especially when it comes to the warrior work side of things, where you're truthful about a man, but you see a reflection. It's a reflection of you. And that's powerful.
Yeah, thanks. Those are all, they sound familiar to my experience too. Yeah, to have a space where you're with other men and you feel their support. You're able to open up about emotions rather than hide them for fear that they'll be used against you, call you pussy or whatever. The wounds we had from our childhood relationships with other men. Yeah, it's like such a beautiful healing that takes place in those men's groups that way. And to feel that, what was the last one you said?
About the warrior side of things. So seeing a shadow in another person that is actually, it's an aspect of yourself.
Thanks. That's also a gift that I've gotten from Mankind Project, that my relationship with another man, if it becomes strained, I don't have to either hate him or run away from him or exclude him. I can address it in a healthy, safe way. So I'm frustrated at you, brother. This thing you did to me, brother, has hurt me, and I'm mad at you about it. And then I can find that, it's not you, brother. It's what happened to me as a child that you're reflecting, or it's what I made it mean. And to hug at the end of that process, it's like such a beautiful affirmation that men don't have to be enemies when conflict comes up. We can work through it. We can find the gold that's there. We can build new relationships, agreements, trust to move forward with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it takes courage.
It takes a lot of courage, especially because from my own perspective, when you approach somebody and tell them how you feel, there's that vulnerability, especially if something it's a negative thing. And it's that vulnerability to be able to tell them that I feel angry, or there's an aspect of you that I hate. But it's not actually them. It's you're looking at it as part of yourself. And that leads on quite nicely to the next bit, which is, how do you define a healthy man?
Yeah, thanks. Let's hold that healthy man. Because what you said is so rich. It's like we haven't a system, a process for dealing with our thoughts and beliefs. So if I have oh God, I can't stand James. He's so arrogant. Or that instead of like really like gossiping about you and listing other people, like he's arrogant, isn't he? You believe it too, right? Instead of that approach, I can say, hey, James, I'm having this situation where I'm judging you as arrogant. Will you help me explore this? And we might have a couple people supporting us in that process. And then you go through what's the data, what's the judgments, what's the feelings, and then the ownership. Where am I arrogant? Because I can give you advice all day. Yeah, James, you'll be happier in life if you're a little more humble. But we do this thing where you point one finger out, three are pointing back at you. So I think that process is that same logic. That my judgments that I'm flinging out at the external world are really just for me inside. And so where am I arrogant? Where am I arrogant? I don't even know if you have a family. I don't even know. There's so many things I don't know about you. And so arrogance to me means self-centeredness. And so, that's where I'm being arrogant in my relationship with you. I haven't taken time to find out about who you are as a man. What aspirations other than this awesome podcast that you're doing? So, yay, I go away with something valuable. Our relationship gets built because I've been real with you rather than blaming you, making you wrong, or the opposite, which I often do is just write you off, avoid your call. Yeah, we build a relationship. So if you segue into the question of what's a healthy man, I think a man that is in touch with his emotions, is willing, sees the value of being vulnerable because it invests in relationships with other men. That vulnerability is the currency for building trust and connection, for building intimacy. Yeah. And for me, a healthy man, there's no such thing. It's a healthy man in community of men. In the family, we build a healthy dad by having a healthy family. A healthy child has healthy parents. The health is not just within us, but it's our environment and our relationships.
Yeah, that's powerful. Can you explain a little bit more about that?
I'm spiritual as anything when I'm sitting on my couch. When I'm sitting on the sofa all alone, I am like so even keeled. Add a person to it who has maybe needs different than mine or different way of speaking or a different accent. All of a sudden, it's more challenging. Then it starts to, in the Hare Krishna movement, we cook with this thing called ghee. And ghee is made with butter. You put a bunch of butter in a pot, you turn the flame on low, just a small flame. And over the course of hours, the impurities in the butter rise to the top. And you could scoop them off. And then what you've got is a thing you can fry things in at a very high temperature and they don't burn. So you have the best fried foods when you fry them in ghee, and it's rich, it's total fat. There's nothing but fat. So in the same way, I feel like there's weeds in my heart. There's things in my heart, some impurities, some wounds, some parts of me that need to be attended to. And they don't come out until there's friction, until there's the rubbing against another person, literally or figuratively. And in there, then I can be like, I don't like the way you did that. And so that brings up like, what is it in me that's needing to be attended to, needing to be expressed? And so for me, spirituality doesn't take place in a vacuum. Anybody can meditate and sit on a yoga mat and do that thing. It's great. Now, can you do it with the person who just cut you off in traffic? Can you do it with that coworker who just took credit for the stuff that you feel you should have gotten credit for? That's practical spirituality. Someone told me, you want to give someone a spiritual test, you take a camera and follow them around for the day. Because spirituality isn't about like how good I can meditate or what I eat or something like that. Spirituality is about how I deal with conflict, how I deal with expressing myself in the world when I'm challenged with something that doesn't match my comfort zone. Do I make them wrong? Republicans hate Democrats, or there's so much divisiveness And that's like a base level. When the Ken Wilber system, we want to come up to the higher levels of synthesis, of cooperation, of what are the common needs that both of these people have. Oh, yeah, you feel strongly about creating a world where there's safety, where there's respect for each other. Yeah, I have those values too, rather than just argue that we have a different candidate that we want to support.
That's powerful, because there's the idea that, as you said, you can be as spiritual or as anything as you want when you're by yourself. But the work is being able to do it out there. And there's a couple of places. There's a place called Oshalia down in Dorset, which is pretty much a personal, the people who are listening, is a personal and spiritual development centre. And it's got its own bubble. Now, it's great. You can do all the work there, but then the next bit is to take that work that you did there out into the real world and to do it in real time circumstances where some people get angry, some people get really emotional, and to be able to maintain that out in front of people is the key.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. It's a great way to express it. And I feel like those tools, like you described earlier, the tool of owning my projections, of having a clearing of withheld energy with me and another person, those are the tools that help me maintain that centeredness, that connection with myself when I'm challenged in those other circumstances. So we don't learn this language when we're in school. This isn't something taught in the curriculum growing up. But for me, these are essential skills for being a good human being, for enjoying life to the fullest extent, for being able to fulfill my human potential. And so like nonviolent communication, the things I learned in Sattva Tov workshop, the Buddhist practices or the Byron Katie approach to relating to my thoughts. And something that came up today was with talking with a friend is I don't need to figure out like how to succeed in my career or succeed in my relationships or all these different areas. I just need to have one thing that I work on. And that one thing is my relationship with fear. Because it pervades everything. My fear she's going to leave me, or my fear that someone's going to think I'm a bad person because I'm bisexual, or whatever my fears might be. If I deal with my relationship with fear, then all of those things will be addressed. My fear to put out a website, my fear to shine bigger in the world, or whatever it is. What's my relationship with fear? And so I'm really excited by this idea that anything I want in life is all just have to hinge on this one thing. What's my relationship with fear? Is it something that I run away from, I hide from, I distract from, I smoke marijuana to get away from? Or is it something that I have curiosity about and I'm going into it? And fear, you're welcome. You're welcome here. Yeah, I can do a website with fear. I can put on a workshop from America and that fear that nobody's going to come. And yeah, it's with me.
Yeah, I start to see fear now as the unknown. Because inside fear, there's this idea that you don't know what's going to happen. Because the only reason fear is coming in is because it's in a place which is unpredictable. And when I feels very stagnated, it feels very hard. Whereas the unknown, changing the fear to the unknown, is a sense of excitement, sense of joy, sense of let's go. What can I explore? What can I do?
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. There's a concept in David's book, Relationships at Work, that's language reflects consciousness. So the words I'm using reflect what's going on inside of me. If I say, oh, I'm shit at mathematics, I don't understand numbers at all. So it's creating my reality. So what I heard for you is this word fear. It has so much connotation. It's a bad thing. And so if you change that word to unknown, yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what's going to happen there, that it feels softer, it feels more expansive. It even lends possibility for curiosity, adventure, and excitement.
Like, I'm not sure if somebody's going to judge me. I'm not sure if people are going to name call me. I'm not sure if I walk out my front door, I'm going to hit by a car, just as an example. But it's the idea that if we get caught in a thinking of fear is going to own me, then we get to a point where we don't do anything. And so it's almost like embracing, not allowing fear to hold us back, but embracing it as something that can help us to grow.
Yeah, information. Yeah, someone said to me, because I was doing some work with a coach on this upcoming workshop and hosting it. It's a big financial commitment for myself. Plus, it's a lot of work telling people like they can't even pronounce the workshop. Sattva Tov. Sattva is a Sanskrit word meaning goodness. And so when I looked at that fear, it's like we walked into, well, what could happen? And we do this in Mankind Project in the process called What's at Risk? What's at risk if you don't change? What's at risk if you do change? So if I do the workshop and no one comes, what's at risk? Yeah, I lose a couple 1,000 pounds. I feel sad for a little bit and I go on with my life. I can live through that. Yeah, what's at risk if I really go for it? And yeah, it's totally successful. Yeah, last year I filled it, 30 people. That was the full capacity of the place I rented. I still have people in my life telling me about the realizations they had from that workshop and how they've stepped more into things that they were afraid to do in their life because of overcoming internal blocks.
And you took, what's the workshop about?
The workshop starts with listening skills. Do I know the difference between listening, advising, consoling, sympathizing? How is empathy different from sympathy? Because this is, since 1999, I've been involved in this question and I continue to be excited by how much richness there is the more that I can listen to a person deeply. If I'm bored with a person, to me, that means I'm not listening to them. I might be hearing the words, but I'm not opening to the somatic energy, to all the information, because the information that comes across from another person, you've probably seen that pie chart before, it's 7% is the words we use. And like 28% is the inflection, the speed, the pace, the other thing. And then 70% of it is not to do with words or sounds at all. It's the energy coming from the person. It's the facial features. There's so much information that we can learn somatically, energetically. And so the more I learn about these practices of deep listening, the richer my life is. And yeah, so I'm excited to bring, because I experienced David Wolf as being a master at this. He's a great facilitator and trainer. And to have him here in my little old town in Wales just feels like a blessing. And so after we've got those skills of listening, then we can start to create the safety. Because when someone feels safe to express themselves, then we can start taking off the masks and looking at what are the masks I wear in life? What are the personas that I feel comfortable showing another person, but it's not my full self. It's not my full authentic self. The full authentic self would include those things, the vulnerable, sad, insecure, that when I start to be comfortable allowing into my being, then they integrate. And they have less power. Sometimes the analogy is given of a beach ball, like you hold down a beach ball under the water and it takes work to hold it down. And like the stripes on the beach ball are emotions. So fear, anger, sadness, joy. And so if I don't want anyone to see I'm an angry man. I got a lot of anger. I don't want anyone to see that, then I'm holding down that anger. So no one sees it. It's taking away some of my energy. And if I take my mind off it, it'll pop back up. And then I'll get angry at my son for spilling milk. And it's like, Dad, chill out. The process in Sattva Tov is to start to quit beach balling our emotions. Instead of pushing them into the darkness, to start to feel them, to start to be curious about them, to look at like, where is it coming from? And what would it look like to live a life of more authenticity? And within that, there's a lot of exercises and games that we do, like these simple games that all of a sudden, by playing that game, I realize so much about myself. How am I viewing other people? How am I viewing myself and the world? And it's quite profound, super experiential. What I learned from David, because of my facilitator training, was with him. And then I came into Mankind Project and other things with that background, is we don't tell anyone anything. There's no like blackboard and you're saying, so this is what you should do. And this is shadow work. And this is this. It's doing it. Okay, we're going to personify our obstacles. You're going to do this. Ready, go. And then we process afterwards and what people learned, and we get to share from each other using I statements, and nothing about making it a religion or making it a philosophy. This is just my heartfelt experience. And by hearing another person's heartfelt experience, I may be like, oh, I'm going to take that gem, that wisdom home. But yeah, really experiential. I like that about David's work.
What are the dates for this workshop?
January 9th through 12th. And you
9th
can
through 12th.
Find it. Maybe we can put the link. Sattva Tov Wales. That's SATVA, Sattva, TOVE, Tov, Mazel Tov. SattvaTovWales.org.
I'll put a link in the show notes, so then they can click on the show notes and then, follow the link to the page. That's not an issue.
Thanks, James.
Do you run any retreats, and what else do you do?
Yeah, Lawrence Johns from Mankind Project, who I know has been on your show too. He and I do an annual, or maybe sometimes twice a year, men's retreat at my family's land here close by. And that's called Dudes in the Dome. We put up a geodesic dome as our workshop area before, and so that name stuck. Yeah, it's a great blend of process work, community, being in nature, just having shared meals with a group of guys, being real with each other. It's so healing. And then, there's a river there, so we can do some Wim Hof cold water immersion and other things that bring aliveness and joy. And so that's something we do within the men's work area. I teach workshops here in Landry Wells on Byron Katie, the process of doing the work, Sattva Tov listening workshops, and then I've been bringing David here for the last 2 years.
Nice. I think the more that we can submerge ourselves in men's work, I think the more enriched our life is going to be.
Yeah, you've gotten a lot out of the men's work, haven't you?
A lot. Thank you very much, Scott.
Oh, James, thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate that you're making this like a priority in your life, of giving this information of things that have helped you, giving it to others who might be newer on the path and want some tips and things. And it's been a pleasure to meet you. Look forward to more.
Thank you very much.